your event today. I hope you all are enjoying your breakfast. If everybody would like to just grab their last minute bagels and juice and take a seat, we're going to get started here in a few minutes. My name is Charlene Doyle, and I am the Vice President of Philanthropy for the Loyola Road chapter here at Loyola. Domestic violence awareness is Alpha Chi Omega's national philanthropy, and our chapter is honored to help fight to end the cycle of abuse. Our chapter supports various organizations, the primary being WINGS, which is a local domestic violence shelter here in Chicago, which provides housing and integrated services to children and adults escaping abuse. We also support Lifespan, which is an organization that provides legal and therapeutic services to victims of sexual assault. Lastly, we support RAIN, which is the nation's largest anti-sexual violence organization. We support WINGS, Lifespan, and RAIN by putting on various fundraisers throughout the year to raise money for survivors. This past September, we hosted a community volleyball event in which all the proceeds went to WINGS. We also have put on various catering events in which we have sold baked goods to raise awareness and funds for survivors. These fundraising events help bring us closer together as a chapter while helping women in need. Although we all enjoy working together to support these philanthropies, we often don't get to see the results of our efforts firsthand, as survivors' identities are protected for safety reasons. So events like today, when we get to hear survivors' stories, really help our chapter connect more deeply with our philanthropy. Today, I would like to welcome Loyola alums Charlene Quint and Megan Weisner for graciously coming to speak with us. Charlene is a survivor of domestic violence and an attorney and a dedicated advocate of domestic violence awareness. After Charlene shares her story, Megan Weisner is going to speak with us. Megan is the manager of clinical services at WINGS. Megan is going to share her insight about WINGS with us and how our donations help the women and children at the shelter. This is a heavy topic, so if you feel triggered in any way, please feel free to step out of the room and do whatever you need to take care of yourselves. If everyone could please silence their cell phones and give the speakers their full attention, that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you, everyone. I would like to welcome Charlene up to the podium.
April 6th, 2012 was my Independence Day. That's the day I decided I would no longer be subject to my husband's daily abuse. I packed an overnight bag, and I hid it in the trunk of my car, and I drove away like I was going to work. I went into hiding for 2.5 years. My name is Charlene Quint, and I have the privilege of serving as a family law attorney in Lake County, focusing my efforts on helping women get out of domestic abuse. I've also founded an organization called Abuse Care that helps women individually, one-on-one, who have been affected by domestic abuse. And I train pastors and business organizations so that they can help in their organizations and help domestic abuse survivors and hold abusers accountable. I've also written a 600-page book that is designed to help women recognize, remove, and recover from abuse. And in January 2024, I will have a curriculum out for support groups, because guess what? There is no curriculum out there for support groups, as crazy as it may sound. So I want to give a little bit of an overview of this domestic abuse and the amazing groups that you folks support. And I am so thrilled that you have taken this on as your national philanthropy, because there's nothing so much more important than that we have healthy women, that we have healthy men, that we have healthy children. So let me give you a few ideas of the, let's call it domestic abuse from the big numbers, the 90,000-foot view. So 35% of women will at some point in their lives experience rape, stalking, or severe physical abuse. And in addition to that, 48% of women will experience coercive control or emotional and psychological abuse. Half of the women that we know will experience abuse. And the other half knows someone. We all know someone. Maybe they haven't shared that with us, but we all know someone who's experienced domestic abuse. 90% of abusers, unfortunately, are men. So my apologies to all the good men in the room, but when I'm going to talk about domestic abuse as he and she, I'm going to use men as he, as abusers as she, because the overwhelming majority of abusers are men. 70% of abusers who abuse an intimate partner also abuse children. And as that abuse gets more severe, that number approaches 100%. 50% of people who are victims of abuse are affected at work, and over 60% of them have had their abusers come to their work and affect how they work. It's costing our country $8.3 billion. 5.8 billion of that is in medical expenses, and the rest is in reduced productivity, because guess what? You can't go to work and concentrate when you've just been raped before you go. Those are just some of the statistics by the numbers. We know that domestic abuse is a generational issue. It's learned because we know that boys raised in abusive homes are 10 times more likely to become abusers themselves, and girls are 6 times more likely to choose an abuser as a spouse. We know that domestic abuse is the #1 reason that women get killed in the world, the #1 reason for homicide. And we also know that it is the top factor for mass shootings. Over 60% of the people who are mass shooters have a history of domestic abuse. So what is abuse? Great question. So it is a comprehensive set of behaviors and attitudes that is designed to maintain control and power over somebody else. And that can be a whole variety of different kinds of things. Sometimes we think that it's just hitting, but it's not. Women, we have so many lies that we believe. Sometimes I've designed my speaks about here's the lies believed and here's the truth, because there's so many myths about domestic abuse, not only among women but among society as a whole. So one of the lies that we think is, geez, domestic abuse is just hitting, but here there's emotional abuse and financial abuse and physical abuse, of course, and sexual abuse and spiritual abuse. So I want to just touch on those just a little bit, but let's talk about who abusers are. First of all, the vast majority of them have something called cluster B personality disorders. For those psych majors out there, the DSM-5, we know these are long-term, permanent psychological disorders. They're not going to be changed with counseling because they don't want to change, right? It's working really well for them. If they rage and explode, that's working well. They get their own way. So they're not changed with that, because you have to want to change for counseling to work. And there's no known drug to do that. But what is the major psychological disorders is narcissistic personality disorder and antisocial personality disorder. And I know those are on a spectrum, right? So you can have the whole disorder, but they're somewhere on the far right of the spectrum where it's affecting their relationships. So what does that look like? What does narcissistic personality disorder look like, or a high level of narcissism? That means you don't have empathy for others. That means you think a whole lot about yourself, right? They think the world revolves around them. Let me just look at some of the DSM-5, so those psych majors, go ahead and tell me if I'm wrong, but they have for narcissists, they have a sense of self-importance. They're preoccupied with fantasies of unlimited success. They believe that they're special and they only have to be around other special people. They want you to admire them and practically worship them. They're the center of the universe and they want everybody else to be the center of the universe. They have a sense of entitlement like nobody's business, right? And that's kind of the crux of it. Their pride is so overwhelming that they don't need to follow anybody else's rules. They don't need to show compassion because you're not worthy. They're better than everybody else. They're exploitative with relationships, right? They take advantage of relationships. You're not valued for who you are, but you're valued for how useful you can be to them. They lack empathy. So the normal kindness and compassion that is it required of every healthy relationship is completely lacking. They're often envious of others. So we have just a ton of these unhealthy relationships and unhealthy characteristics. And for antisocial personality disorder, which could possibly be even worse, but they often go together, narcissists and sociopaths, they have a failure to conform to social norms, right? They're the ones, the rules don't apply to them, right? They're gonna just run right past that. They destroy property and they hurt other people, and they don't really care. Deceitfulness, now this kind of is present in all abusive relationships, pathological lying and deceitfulness. Impulsivity, failure to plan ahead, irritability and aggressiveness, right? They go from 0 to 100 in terms of raging, and they're not just mildly annoyed. The smallest thing is going to set them off and start yelling. They have a reckless disregard for the safety of others. So if you're driving down a car and they're speeding away, you're terrified. They're irresponsible. It doesn't matter what you put in a court order. It doesn't matter what you put in a legal document. They're not going to follow it. And they have a lack of remorse. They just don't have conscience. So these are what you get when you have someone who's an abuser, whether it's they have been diagnosed or not. So let me just go through some of the different types of abuse because we don't often recognize those, right? And when I was sitting in your shoes as a young lady in college, I had no idea that there was all these different kinds of abuse. The first one that's present in all relationships, in all abusive relationships, let me clarify that, is emotional abuse, right? This is like the crux of abuse, and emotional abuse. And let me give you some of the kind of tactics that they use. Name calling, raging, again we talked about that, lying and deceitfulness, gaslighting. If you haven't heard that term, it means doing something that's harmful and then claiming you've never done that, right? So that's, and it makes the other person question their reality. So if you deal with that for years and years, you wonder, wow, is it me? Am I the problem? They use projection, which is accusing somebody else of the things that they're most guilty of themselves, right? You're the abusive one. You're the one that's not respectful. Criticism and contempt and stonewalling and the silent treatment and social alienation, right? Taking away from all your friends in your support group. These are just some of them, but there's so many of them. And you've asked me to share my story, so I can tell you, I've had all of these. I've had all of these when you deal with someone who's raging at the drop of a hat, who's name calling. And then the next thing is financial abuse. Okay, financial abuse is present in 99% of abusive relationships, right? Money is power. Abusers know that. And you need So what does that look like? It usually looks like one of two things. If the abuser has money and has a big job, it usually looks like the other person is cut off from all access to those funds, right? You're not on the credit cards, you're not on there's no shared accounts, you're not on the investment accounts, you don't have access to money. So that's one way. You're not on the house title, you're not on the car title, everything is in his name. But the other way, on the opposite end of the spectrum, is sometimes they just will refuse to contribute to the finances, right? So you have a loaf at home, they're a parasite. And so they're taking advantage of you. You're working and supporting a family and doing everything, and they just choose not to do that. So in my situation, I had a ex-husband that the day before the wedding, he had me sign a 28-page prenuptial agreement, completely one-sided, and I probably wouldn't have signed it except that about a month before he had convinced me to quit my job. Right? Oh, I make enough money for all of us. You don't have to work. Why don't you stay home? We'll have a whole mess of kids, and then you can travel with me, yada, yada, yada. So if you ever have someone that tells you, oh, you can do all these wonderful things, and they're a narcissist, beware, because they're never kind. They're only doing that for a reason. So I was between a rock and a hard place. I didn't have a job. I had a 5-year-old to support from a previous marriage, and I thought, what am I going to do here? So, and after that, I had no access to funds. We never had a joint account. I was never on any investment account. The house was in his name, all the cars were in his name, all the motorcycles in his name, the boats were in his name. I had nothing in my name. So, I decided to go to law school. The next thing we look at is physical abuse. Now, lots of the times we think, physical abuse, okay, well, I'm not getting hit, so that doesn't apply to me. But, the smart abusers, they don't leave bruises, right? They let someone else do it. So physical abuse, yeah, it can be hitting or using a weapon, but it also includes not letting her leave. You take the car keys so she can't even leave. You're stuck there. You lock the door. Or maybe you're stuck sleeping in the car because he won't let you in the house. In my situation, I was driving. We had a Christmas party, a company Christmas party with my law firm, and I was asked to drive one of our overserved guests home, so I did. My husband followed me, and he was so angry that this was really inconvenient for him. And so after I dropped our overserved guest off in Chicago, he picked me up and then dumped me off in Chicago, 35 miles from my home in Lake Forest. It was Christmas. I didn't have a coat. I didn't have a phone. I didn't have money. I didn't have a credit card. I had me in my evening gown in the snow, and he left. So I walked north thinking, okay, somewhere up here is a university, and kids are usually up all night long. So I'll just keep walking north, and I will find some place that's open all night long. And I did, in my evening gown. They kind of looked at me like, whoa, what are you doing here at 2 in the morning with your evening gown on? And it was a Blockbuster video. May they rest in peace. But they let me use their phone. And I called a cab company to pick me up. Now, of course, I didn't have any money with me because I didn't have a wallet. I didn't even have lipstick. But they took me home, and I paid them when I got home. But this didn't leave a bruise. But yeah, that's physical abuse. I had one client whose husband would not take her to the hospital when she was having a baby. So she had to have the baby at home. And with my kids, he put me in the back of the car, and he went shopping. We went shopping, new video. I make a new video record. Today's a great day to shop for, new flat screen TV on the wall. I'm in the back in labor. So it took about 2 hours, what would normally be a 10-minute ride. So, but yeah, it just doesn't. So the next thing is we don't think about oftentimes spiritual abuse, right? Who knew that word existed, right? I sure didn't. The spiritual abuse is whenever anybody uses your faith against you to justify their abuse and to keep you there. So in the faith traditions of the Judeo-Christian traditions, people use the Bible to justify their abuse, saying, oh, I'm the head of the household. But that's not what God would never justify abuse. So, but whatever faith tradition, if a woman if that's her faith tradition, it will be used against her to somehow twist the scriptures out of context and use that to and if it's not your spouse, it maybe it's a pastor or a priest or a rabbi or an imam that will use that against you. But God never condones abuse. I will give you one example that it was just so startling to me that I couldn't get over it, so I had to include it in here. In November of 2021, there's a pastor called Burnett Robinson, who is the pastor of a church in the Bronx, and he famously, or infamously, said from the pulpit, when preaching about wifely submission, he said, "Gentlemen, the best person to rape is your wife." Goodness gracious, that is not what God says. Fortunately, somebody took a video of that, sent it to his denominational leaders. They immediately removed him and clarified that that is not what we believe. But this is some of the crazy stuff that's out there. And that leads me on to the last one, which is sexual abuse. Wow, sexual abuse is it's so common in abusive relationships. Coercive sex, when you've been manipulated or coerced to having sex, is almost universal. Ladies, you don't owe a man sex when you're dating. Let me say that. You don't owe a man sex when you're dating. Right? That is up to you. And if they are going to cross your boundaries, because I know it's still a no, if they're going to cross your boundaries, tell them goodbye. Tell them goodbye. But sexual assault, even in a marriage relationship, we know that 68% of abusive relationships have actual sexual assault. That's rape, ladies. Rape. And 80% of the time, it's repeated again and again and again. And sometimes people say, well, if that really happened, that person would be in jail, so that couldn't have happened, right? So they don't believe her. But here's the statistics. From RAIN, one of the organizations that you support, of 1,000 actual rapes, only 310 ever get reported. Of those 310, only 50 result in arrests. Of those 50 arrests, only 28 result in a felony conviction, and only 25 result in incarceration of a rapist. For those math majors out there, that means 97.5 of rapists go free with 0 consequences, right? It's hard to prove that. It's hard to prove that unless you have a video camera going on somewhere in the bedroom or outside where this happens. It's he said, she said. And the standard is beyond a reasonable doubt. So what do they always say? Oh, it's consensual. She agreed to it. Right? So. And I think this was probably, no, I don't think that, I know. This was what the final straw was for me. So, in January of 2012, I wrote my husband, being a lawyer and all, I wrote him a long outline, a 15-page letter, outlining all the abuses that had happened over the past 20 years. And I said, you need to get counseling. I didn't know counseling didn't work, but I thought, you still need to get counseling, not knowing that wouldn't change. And his response, well, it's not that bad. If it was that bad, you would have left 10 years ago. That was his response. And instead of getting counseling, he went to his doctor and got bottled Viagra. And from that day on, every morning before I went to work, he raped me, and every afternoon after the kids went to bed, he raped me. And after he did that every day until I left. I said, there's nowhere on the planet that this is right. So that was the straw that broke the camel's back. So what do you do when you confront the abuser? Well, what does he do? Kind of like my abuser. Either I don't care, maybe he gives you a false apology. Mistakes repeat. I'm sorry you feel that way. I'm sorry you're so sensitive, right? There's denials and justifications and mitigations. It's not that bad, right? That's what the typical response is. So anytime you try to confront them, you just go around in circles. There's no conflict resolution because they're never going to agree that what they did is wrong. They'll play the pity card. Poor me. Poor me. How can you be mad at me? One of the reasons why we get into these crazy abusive relationships is called the cycle of abuse. I get asked all the time, well, she knew what she was getting into, right? I mean, she knows what he's like. I've had guardian ad litems tell me that. Well, she knew what she was getting into. Really, nobody signs up for this. Nobody signs up for this. But the reason why I get into it is something called the cycle of abuse, right? This is how it happens. So when you start dating someone who's one of these disordered individuals, they try to be the best they can, right? They are on a mission to get you emotionally attached to them and financially attached to them, right? They're not being nice because they're nice. They put on a false persona of someone they're not, just to get you attached to them. So they're going to wine you and dine you. They're going to tell you right away, oh, you're the most amazing person in the world. Oh, we're soulmates, right? It happens so quickly. They put on an Oscar-worthy performance. They're really good, really good. And so we think, oh my goodness, Prince Charming has just arrived. And so we are all in, right? And then the next thing happens, right? You are emotionally attached and you get financially attached and you get married or you move in together, you have a baby or you start a business together, right? One of these things that means you're relying on each other. So now you're entangled, you're entwined with each other. And that's when it starts, right? As soon as the marriage starts, as soon as you have that baby, as soon as you buy that house together or move in together, that's when the abuse starts because they can't keep on that mask forever, right? So that's when the abuse starts. And that's called the devaluation phase. The first phase is actually called the love bombing phase because you just feel like you are love bombed. And then the last phase is called the discard phase because after so many years, you just can't take it anymore, right? So you just want peace. You just try to remove yourself from this. And he's already moved on because he's probably got someone waiting in the wings. And so you're discarded like yesterday's, kitchen appliance that's thrown out and you get replaced with a new one. And it's incredibly hurtful because you might have gone through 20, 30, 40. I had one lady in my support group that was married for 52 years before she finally left. But then there's another phase within that second phase. There's a cycle of abuse. So that's kind of the macro cycle of abuse, but there's a little micro cycle of abuse. So within that phase where he's devaluing you after you've just said I do or bought in a house together or something, there's these little smaller phases, and they're similar because you've got this phase where you're walking on eggshells. You're not sure what's going to set him off. So it's this tension phase, right? You're just trying not to get in trouble. You're trying not to tick him off. You don't know what is going to cause it next to happen. But then it happens, right? There's this big explosion. He's either raging at you or throwing dishes or doing something that's an explosive stage. And then when that's over, there may be a little time of peace. So he's on good behavior, right? right? So, oh, he may say, I'm sorry, I'll never do that again. I'm sorry, I'll go see a counselor. I'm sorry, I'll go see the priest or the pastor or whatever. So you're thinking, oh, great, this is, there's some hope. And so you have this hope. And then that doesn't last for too long, because then you get back into the tension phase and it starts all over again. And so that cycle keeps women in abuse, because they're hoping during those good times, the good behavior, that this is going to work, right? And they're hoping that Prince Charming is going to come back from when we were dating. He was wonderful. What happened? But once you go through one phase, he's never going to go back to the other phase. You're not going to get Prince Charming again. It doesn't happen that way. But after you've lived through this for how long, what effect does it have on people, right? We all need to grow and be the people that we are designed to be. We need kindness and compassion, but that's exactly the opposite of what we're getting. So what happens? 100% of women who go through this have post-traumatic stress disorder, literally. And 87%, it's at least moderate or severe in 87% of the time. So we have physical symptoms, we have emotional symptoms, you have a higher degree of heart issues, you have a higher degree of GI tract issues. Everything in your whole body, because of the constant stress, is affected, right? So we need to recognize that. There's depression and hopelessness and trauma bonds and soul ties that we need to cut. There's this cognitive dissonance, and that's why it takes so long to figure this out, because you want to believe that he's Prince Charming, but you're seeing this crazy come out, and you're like, well, who's the real person? So it takes a while, but it also takes a while for other people to see that too, right? So I often get, well, why do people stay? Why'd you stay so long? Or if you've left early, my clients have heard, well, you know, you've only been married for a few years, you need to give it a chance. But if you stayed for 20 or 25, why didn't you leave earlier? So you're caught between a rock and a hard place. Nothing you ever do is right. So here's in David Letterman style, for those of you that are old enough to remember David Letterman, he always had the top 10. Top 10, why do women stay? Well, number one reason is lack of finances, right? Remember, 99% of women, there's financial abuse in abusive relationships. So he's already playing this out. He's playing this out from the get-go. They're predators. This is not by accident. He said, oh, honey, I'm big enough for both of us. You can stay home with the kids, and I'll take us, to these wonderful places. Or, why don't you stay out in the homeschool? Schools are crazy right now, so we're doing what we used to. So you think, okay, this is good. We don't really need two incomes. We can do this. So now you've just given up your power. So number one reason is lack of financial ability. Second reason is they think counseling is going to work, or that he's going to go back to Prince Charming somehow. That's not going to happen, because these are permanent disabilities. They're not going to result having any difference in results if you go to counseling. Another reason is they don't know the cycle of abuse, right? They just keep hoping that during this good behavior cycle that's going to continue, but it never does. Maybe her religion or her faith tradition has given her some bad information to say, oh, you got to stay no matter what. Oh, I deal with that all the time. As a woman of faith myself, I can tell you that there is nothing in the Bible that says you have to stay in an abusive relationship. And we'll talk about that. If you've got we'll have a long talk about that. So catch me up later. Threats, maybe he's threatened her. Like, if you leave, I'm going to leave you as a bad lady. You're not going to have anything. I'm going to take the kids. I'm going to get full custody, and you're going to have nothing. You're going to be out on the streets. Or maybe he's actually threatened her with her life. So those are all good reasons to stay, right? And we all know that on average, the most dangerous time to leave, the most dangerous time for a woman is right when she leaves. That's when the abuse escalates, because he knows now he's just lost control, right? And that's when the majority of the homicides happen, is when she's leaving. So So maybe she's physically prohibited from leaving. He's locked the doors. She can't get out. She doesn't want to blow up her family, right? Because this is going to be a huge thing. She may be in denial because guess what? If it's not abuse, then you don't have to deal with it. Maybe he just has a big personality. Maybe he's just the alpha male. You know, maybe he's just bigger than life, or he's had a bad day. So they're in denial about what really is. Because abuse, you know, it's just hitting, right? So I'm not getting hit, so it can't be abuse. So many women are in that situation. And so many women of faith are in that situation because, geez, if you're sitting in a church pew or in a synagogue or in a mosque, oh yeah, it didn't happen to me. You know, we don't do that here, right? So she's in denial about what it actually is. Another reason is that they're unable to recognize the different forms of abuse. As we just talked about, know the different forms of abuse. And know it's healthy. We need to know it's healthy. She may want to stay there so she can protect her children, right? She knows this is bad, but at least if she's there, she's a buffer, right? She can take the hits, or she can take the rages, and little Johnny, little Susie don't have to get it all because, wow, if she's divorced and she's gone, the courts are going to let him have time with them. Who knows what's going to happen to them, right? But here's when most women usually leave, is when they realize they can't protect their kids anymore. Right? When you realize you can't protect them, you get out as quickly as you can. Right? That's usually the tipping point. So what do we expect from an abuser when she finally decides to leave? I tell my clients this all the time. Abusers are predictable. I will tell you exactly what they're going to do. First of all, he's going to try, because it's always worked in the past, a false apology. Gee, I'm sorry, I'll never do that again. Or, mistakes were made. Again, the false apologies. I'm sorry you were so sensitive, you know. But if that doesn't work, he's immediately going to switch and turn on her. It's all your fault. You didn't. You made me do it. He's going to do a pity play. Poor me. I haven't done anything. My wife left me. She abandoned me. I didn't do anything wrong. He is going to tell all his friends, everybody else, all the kids. He's going to tell the kids, your mom left. And you know what? I'm going to stay married, but she doesn't want to do it anymore. I'm only going to go outside, right? But no. So he is going to play the pity card. He's going to have the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde personality. So to the world, he may be just Mr. Wonderful. He's so charismatic. Everybody in church and the synagogue and the country club. Oh, he's the life of the party. Behind closed doors, he's completely somebody else. He's going to be vindictive, right? He's going to find ways to get even with his spouse that left him, because that's high treason if you leave one of these people. He is going to socially alienate her and take away her network of social support. And how does that look? He's going to tell everybody at church, the country club, all her friends. He's going to be calling her friends, the ones that he's never spoken to before, because he's above that, about what a horrible person she is and how she did this. And I'll tell you the top lies, because they're universal. One, she abandoned me. Or if she took the kids, she kidnapped the kids. So one version of those. She had an affair, right? This is always accused because he's so wonderful. Why would anybody ever leave him? So it has to be her fault. She had an affair. Or she has a mental illness, right? And it's been a long time, and he's been putting up with it for so long, and he just hopes the best for her, right? So these are the typical lies. And guess what? He's going to tell the kids that too. Parental alienation happens in every abusive situation. Why? Because dad wants to get the kids all on team dad and all against team mom. And this, I think, is the most heartbreaking thing for every mom. Because, ladies, if you haven't had a kid before, I will just say, your mom's heart is walking with you wherever you go. You are the most important thing in her life. And she would walk in front of a train for you. And when someone, her own child, says, no, I'm siding with dad because I believe his lies. That is the most heartbreaking thing in the world for a mom. So if any one of you have been in this situation, and I know some of you are probably children of divorce, I want to encourage you to reach out to the one that had to leave and not believe everything that the other parent says. The other parent will try to use each and every time, they'll use the kids as pawns in their little chess game, because guess what? You guys are they know there's nothing that will hurt a mom's heart more than using her kids to turn against her. He can take away all her money, and he often does, and that's okay, she'll make more. He can take away the house, and you know what? They often do. That's okay, she'll get another house, she'll find an apartment, she'll go into hiding like I did for 2.5 years. She'll get another job, she'll figure it out. When you take away your kids, that is devastating. So I want to encourage you to reach out to your mom or your dad if he's the one that's the victim, and make amends. The other thing that will happen is financial lies and abuse. He will hide things, right? No matter what, I see someone laughing over here. Yeah, he's going to lie about it. Yep, they're perpetual liars. He will hide things. No matter. I've helped divorce people who are paupers on public aid and multimillionaires, and they all say the same thing. I'm poor. I can't afford child support. I can't afford maintenance. I can't afford anything. So they'll lie, and it's all going to be a financial. After the kids, it's going to be a financial fight, and they're going to use the court system. Caitlin's mom and I know that. they use the court system to further the abuse on the victim, right? They're going to drag things out. Divorces can happen literally, within a few months. You can wrap these things up. I had a prenuptial agreement that was supposed to keep things, like you wrap it up, you just follow, here's the formula, we're done. No, it took 2 years because they won't agree to anything that's reasonable. And they drag it out to the very end. And sometimes they'll go to a trial. Goodness, that's ridiculous. Just settle it and get on with your life, right? But they don't want to do that because that's one way to get even. So what can we do as people? I love this, that this is part of your philanthropic outreach, but what can we do as a friend of someone who's going through this? If you've gone through this, I'm going to talk to you too, but if you're a friend, or you work at an organization, or you belong to a church, or a synagogue, or a mosque, or any business, how can you support someone, right? What do you do? Okay, so we're in Chicago, so I've come up with a great acronym, DABEARS, all right? DABEARS. It's easy to remember, BEARS. B stands for believe. If someone comes up to you and says, this is what's been happening to me, believe her, right? This is the most important thing that it's probably been on her heart, if you're a young person, for months, if not years, if you're older, and she's been hiding it. So believe her and validate her, right? Let her know that it's not her fault that this is happening. You've tried your best, and this is not you, so believe her. E stands for educate, right? Like what you're doing right now. Educate yourselves. There's a 40-hour training class. If this is your heart, like it's my heart, take that training class. You can get certified. Half of it's online, half of it's in person, and you can get certified so you can be one of those people that knows about domestic abuse. It is a subspecialty in the area of counseling, so not every counselor is going to know about it. That's why oftentimes when you go to counseling, it just doesn't work because they're trying to put two people back together and one's abusive. No. And those are counselors that are not trauma informed and they don't know domestic abuse. Find somebody else. So educate yourself and educate those around you, right? So if you're working at an organization or coming in, like, hey, you know what? We need to get this on board. This is I encourage businesses that this can be something, we have all sorts of benefits. Why don't we make emergency funds for domestic abuse survivors, a benefit that we can have. We got benefits for everything else, including, taking your dog to work. So let's do that. Let's do something that's really helpful. Hold the abuser accountable. All right? You don't need to be friends with him. You don't need to talk to him. When you are supporting an abuse, what does that do to the survivor, to the victim? Gosh, that's painful. Gosh, that's painful, right? Get to know the facts, ladies. Get to know the facts. Hold them accountable. I tell churches, I have a whole lot I tell churches because now I'm been asked by a denomination to help train their pastors. Well, you can do a lot for churches. Hold them accountable. So, refer them to domestic abuse professionals, right? Most of us aren't domestic abuse professionals. We're not that familiar with it. Certainly, I don't know any pastors that are. I don't know any priests that are. Well, I know one here in the Archdiocese, but I don't know, any rabbis, any imams that are. So refer them to domestic abuse professionals because they will help the healing process. Also, if they need it, refer them to a place to get an order of protection, right? Because that's not going to stop if you don't get one, right? You may need to refer them to a good lawyer. You may need to refer them to a domestic abuse organization like WINGS because they have the resources and the training and the knowledge and the shelters to help people out. Refer to professionals. And the last one is support. Even if you can't financially support, which would be huge because that's a big deal, right? Emotionally support them, right? This is such a vulnerable time for people that are going through this. So check in on them every once in a while, right? Maybe, if they don't have any place to go, say, hey, you come with me, until you get yourself on your feet. If you're an organization or business, again, an emergency fund. What a concept, right? Or if you're a business or any type of organization, put little things, like little brochures in the ladies' bathrooms so that they have the phone numbers to organizations, so that they know here's what the signs of abuse are, right? They can stick it in their purse without anybody seeing that. So, we can do a lot as friends. So, again, I get these questions. Well, she must have known what she was getting herself into. But here's the lies that we tell ourselves as young women to get us into abusive relationships. Because most of the women that I counsel are in their 30s and 40s and 50s. And again, I had this 74-year-old. She was just a rock star because she was done the work to do the healing and was helping everybody else. So many of us would say, oh, younger self, this is what I wish I knew back in the day. So I'm telling you all what I wish I knew back in the day when I was sitting in your shoes. Lie number one that we tell ourselves, that get us into these abusive relationships. Well, my abuser was nice when we first dated. I don't know what happened, but I'm sure he'll be nice once again when we get married. Oh no, that's a lie. Here's the truth. Recognize an abuser for what he is. He's a predator who put on an act to deceive you and to capture you. All right? This should not be something that we're hoping that the behavior gets better when you get married. If he's not on good behavior now, it's not going to get better. Another lie I hear all the time is, oh, it's okay if I choose a spouse that needs some work or someone who's not really following a good path. No one's perfect. I can love him enough to change him. Oh, that's a really bad one as well, right? Because the truth is you can't love him enough to change him. He's choosing to be who he is. Wait for the person who is the right person for you. One of the famous pastors of this last century was Billy Graham. And he asked his wife, Ruth, to marry him. She said, no. She said, no. You need some work on yourself. You are not the man of God that you need to be to marry me. Whoa. Right? So that was he eventually did some work on himself, came back, was a wonderful pastor. But she knew what she needed. There's another lie. Oh, there's good in everyone. You must be a good guy. It's not always true. We need to be discerning. I think that's the one reason why people get into these relationships, is because they're not discerning enough. We need to know lies from truth, and good from evil. And guess what? Evil masquerades as good sometimes. Another lie is everyone is generally good, so I trust everybody. As a good person with an open heart, we're often too willing to trust people, right? We live it all out there, right? But there's an ancient proverb that tells us, guard your heart, for from it is the wellspring of life. Guard your heart and trust that only to people who are worthy of that trust, right? That's not everybody. Another lie here. Those little things, like being rude to his mom or kind of condescending, talking down to the waiter or whatever, talking over children, they don't really mean anything. They're little. He won't treat me like that. Guess what? He will. He will. How he treats others who are not in a position of power is an important reflection of his character. And eventually, he's going to treat you how he talks about his mom, right? Be mindful. Another lie I hear so often is, if I don't get married to him, no one else will want me, and I'll be single and lonely the rest of my life. Oh, ladies, there is a perfect match for you somewhere out there. You are enough. There's a perfect match. You wait for that person. There's so many people, I'm just going to be single. But you know what? You just haven't found the right person yet. You wait. You wait for the right person who will appreciate all that you are. There's another lie. I'm not good enough. Everyone else does these amazing things, but not me. But guess what? God made you wonderfully just the way you are. You're enough. Get off social media. All that is just a highlight reel, right? It's just a highlight reel. Another one that's like, oh, things are moving really fast. You must really love me. No, that's not necessarily true, because as we know, abusers are predators. They get in there and do it, right away to get you emotionally and financially intertwined. As a test, just say no once in a while. No, I can't go to dinner. No, I can't go to lunch. See how he reacts. Right? Abusers hate the word no. Because a healthy person will say, oh, well, I'm disappointed. I'm sorry. But maybe next week. Abusers will say, what? Am I not good enough? You got somebody else? What's wrong? What's wrong with you? Well, you don't want to be with me? Watch how they react to your no. And the last one is like, well, I feel something's wrong. I just don't have this peace, before the wedding. I'm not sure. I can't put my finger on it. Right? That's an indication that's not the right person for you. If you've got knots in your stomach, if you don't have peace that this is the person that you're meant to be with, that's a sign that's not the right person. You can't put your finger on it. Everybody I know who's ever gotten a divorce has had the same thing. They just weren't at peace when they were walking from home. So but how do you choose the right partner? Right? So couple things I think it's important to know, especially at your age, because guess what? At your age, within the next 10 years, the majority of you will probably be married. The majority of you may even have kids. So there's a good possibility that many of you are going to choose a partner in the next 10 years. So let's talk about what you need to look at when you're looking at a partner. Ladies, you are the queen of your kingdom. Let me say that again. You are the queen of your kingdom. You have been entrusted circle of influence, whether that is your home, whether that's your job, whether that's your community, whether that's your faith community. This is a circle that you have been entrusted with. Choose someone who is worthy to be your co-leader in that kingdom, right? You don't choose a charity case. You choose someone who is worthy of being a co-leader. And I like to think of the late Queen Elizabeth II, who we just said goodbye to last year, and her grandson, William. They knew they were entrusted with the kingdom of England, right? So what did they choose? They chose someone who was worthy to lead with them, who had the strength, who had that sense of duty. I need to support my country. You need someone who has that sense of duty. I need someone who wants to support my family, to support my causes, to support my community, to support my faith community, to support my employment, whatever it is. Choose someone who is worthy. You know, I know William and Kate, they've been at it for a while. They learned from the best. But they took a little time off because they both wanted to make sure when she got married, she was stepping into a whole new life. Make sure you have someone that's worthy of co-leading that kingdom that you have been entrusted with, right? Know what healthy means. Know what emotional health means, and make sure you're emotionally healthy first, because it takes two emotionally healthy people to get an emotionally healthy marriage. You can't make an emotionally healthy marriage if just one of you is emotionally healthy. It won't work. You don't have enough to make up for somebody else who is not emotionally healthy. So make sure you're emotionally healthy, and make sure he's emotionally healthy. You're adults now, so whatever you have to deal with it, right? I talk to people all the time, and oh yeah, I'm this way because my childhood. All right, ladies, we can't blame our parents anymore. This is part of adulting. If you've got some issues, see a counselor and make sure that you're emotionally healthy. Make sure he's emotionally healthy too, right? Make sure when you look at him and you as well, make sure that not only you have similar emotional health, but here's the things. Like again, my list of 10. Look at his character. Does he exude what a good character is? Does he have love in his heart, and joy, and peace, and patience, and kindness, and goodness, and gentleness, and self-control, and humility, right? So it's character. 2, if you're thinking about walking down the aisle together, what does love look like? I've been to a zillion weddings, and they have this description of love, right? Love is patient, love is kind. Have you ever heard that? Raise your hands if you've heard this one. Love is patient, love is kind, all right? Put that person's name in there. Bob is patient, Bob is kind. Bob does not demand his own way. Bob is not arrogant. Bob is not rude. Bob does not wants the truth to win out. If you can't put that person's name in for that, that's not love. I don't know what it is, but it's not love. So look for a love that looks like that, and you can put someone's name in there. Respect, right? Does he respect you? Does he respect other people? Does he respect people? They can't do a thing for him. They can't do a thing. The person on the street, the person, the wait staff, give the respect. What does his language say? How does he speak to other people? That tells the heart. Look at his positivity. Is he a grumbler, or is he a positive person, right? You want someone that's going to be positive in your life. Does he have thankfulness in his heart? Because thankfulness is the key to joy, right? If you're thankful for everything that you've been given, wow, you just walk around a whole different person. Because the opposite of that is entitled. Wow, I didn't get that. I didn't get that. Should have gotten that. Oh, grumpyest people in the world. And humility, because if you're thankful, you just recognize that everything's a gift. All these good things in your life are gifts. Peace. Does he have peace, or is he constantly dividing people? What does his reputation as friends say? How does he handle with your other significant other before you say I do. You know, what does he do when you're late for the airport? Does he flip out, or is he calm? What does he do if he's got a deadline at work? What does he do if he goes to a hotel or the car rental and his reservation is not there? Does he start yelling at the person on the other side? Or is he like, okay, we're gonna go solve it? What does he do? What does he do if he's in a car accident? My son just called me the other day, got in a car accident, drunk driver hit him, thankful he's okay. But he said, yeah, it's with his girlfriend. I said, yeah, this is Jordan's first car accident. And I was thinking to myself, yeah, my kids are pros at this. We all get that first one out of the way by the time they're 18, right? So, so he went ahead and, you know, took care of business. But, you know, how do you react when you're under adversity? And finally, how does he handle money, right? Is he generous? Or is he hoarding? This is something from the heart. You need to know who you are before you go walking into a marriage. Know who you are, right? You have been put in this place for such a time as this. Each one of you, has been made uniquely and designed for a purpose that nobody else on earth can do as good as you. Some of you are made to be an artist. Some of you are made to be a psychologist. Some of you are made to be a graphic designer. Some is made to be a computer technician. You have been uniquely designed for such a time as this. So know who you are. And know that the only opinion of you that matters is God's opinion of you, right? And he thinks you're amazing because he made you in his image. Don't let anybody else tell you something different. And the other thing, finally, is know your life mission, right? This is so important. We need to know where we're going in life. We need to have a trajectory. Where are you going? What is your unique purpose in life? What have you been called to do? Sometimes that lines up with your vocation. Sometimes it doesn't. But we're all put here for a purpose. Mark Twain once said, the two most important days in your life is the day you're born and the day you find out why. So do some soul searching and find your mission, right? And then find someone else, if you're going to find someone else who shares that mission, or who at least appreciates your mission. Right. So you may be wondering what I've done since April 6, 2012 to now, when I'm standing in front of you today. When I got out of this, and I finally got out of hiding, I was able to buy a house. But I had to take some time. I bought a house half an hour away because I didn't want to run into my abuser. And I was non-functional. I had to take some time to heal and figure what in the world just happened to me. And so I did literally hundreds of thousands, or tens of thousands of hours researching abuse, researching what it is and who are the abusers and what effect does it have on people and how do you heal, right? I went through my Bible beginning to end multiple times. Like, what's going on here? Why is the world not doing this? So, and then I felt a calling. I was like, wow, I've been fortunate enough. I came out with some resources, but I know a lot of people don't. I was an attorney. I worked for a big law firm here in Chicago, but that was not where my heart was. So I don't know if you guys have ever had a conversation with God, and he said, I'll tell you what the conversation was. It was, all right, I'm calling you to represent women in the courtroom. I'm like, oh, no. You got the wrong girl, God. This is not me. That's hard stuff. The litigation, fighting it out. I just want people to get along, sing kumbaya. Maybe I can be a teacher at a university or something like that. I said, no. I know who you are. I know because I made you. He says, but I'm calling you in the courtroom, and I'm going to make you into that fighter. I'm going to make you into that warrior because you're going to know it's me, not you. I said, all right, I got nothing. So I stopped my practice with my law firm, my big law firm, and I just hung out my shingle and I started practicing in the area of family law. And of course, my first client was someone from my old church, a church who had taken his side instead of mine. So that was an interesting way to start. But also, I felt I needed to help other people. So in support groups, because you can get them out of, from the legal system, but they need healing. So I started with a safe place, which is in Lake County. So I started support groups. And in COVID, they stopped their support groups. And I thought, well, goodness gracious, that's when people are now stuck in a house with crazy. So I started my own curriculum and I started support groups. And now with Zoom, it's been a national support group because I've been on national podcasts of people. So it's a national support group. I wrote a 600-page book that helps women recognize and remove and recover. And it's won the 2021 Christian Literary Award of the Year. It's won the 2022 Independent Publisher of the Year award. So it's helped literally thousands of people. And next spring, I'm going to come out with the curriculum so that other groups can have some curriculum for support groups. The other thing that I felt called to do was open my house, because I know what it's like when you have to leave, and you have to leave now. So I was fortunately remarried to a wonderful man who he himself had been a victim of abuse on the other side. And so we open our house to victims of abuse. And every year since 2017, we've had wonderful families come to stay with us. And every single one, I can tell you, everyone that I've represented, everyone that I've counseled, everyone who's lived with us has been blessed. Once they get outside of that craziness of abuse, the blessings just come down, and it's a redemption story in every case. And let me just share a couple with you. In 2017, we had our first family stay with us. It was a mom and two girls, and they were so cute. They were teenagers and they both loved soccer. And this past summer, my husband and I, well, first of all, they asked us to be their godparents, which is such a blessing to us. So of course we said yes in a nanosecond. But in 2024, this year, the youngest one played on the U.S. Women's National Olympic team and brought back the gold medal. This is amazing blessings that happen. Her older sister got her master's degree. The next year we had another family, same thing, mom and two teenage girls. This last month, the oldest one, she's already graduated as a nurse. Her mom went back to college and got her master's degree as a teacher. All the kids have gotten through college. She got married. She asked my husband to pastor her wedding and be the speaker, because she's like, I've never met a godly man other than you in my life, and I want you to be the pastor of our wedding. Like, wow, what a privilege. But every single person I've had, they've gone back to school. The moms have gone back to school. They've gotten their doctorate degree or their master's degree or their bachelor's degree. It's a blessing. So the dollars that you guys give and to support groups, these women, they go on to do amazing things. And so I just want to thank you for what you do, for this philanthropy that you have. There's one of my favorite sayings is by Edmund Burke, who is a great parliamentarian, and he said, all that is necessary for the triumph of evil is that good men do nothing. So thank you for doing something, and I encourage you to continue to do that. If you yourself are in an abusive situation, I encourage you, tell someone, tell a domestic abuse counselor, go seek out your local domestic abuse counselor. But if you are if you know someone, a friend has come to you, be that supportive, be that bear, be that Chicago bear. Thank you for having me. God bless. Charlene